Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here, and I have the pleasure, nigh the honor, to have Mr. Barri Griffiths in the house. How you doing, my brother?
Man, you're going to make me blush. Come on, stop giving me so many compliments. The pleasure's all mine, man. I'm happy to be here, excited to...
So this is my new BFF. He is an ex-wrestler, and he is Cirque du Soleil and also a investor. And, you know, he's got an amazing podcast that I had the pleasure of being on, but more importantly, he's a great human. We know where the real power comes because I've met his wife. She's actually the one that keeps it all together, I would imagine, right, sir?
I don't know about that,
but what I like to do with my guests is I like to let them start the story where they want to. So, you know, ultimately, you know, you can start your story wherever you want, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, I'll try and fill in a kind of backstory. So grew up in Wales in the UK. Wales is a country. Not everybody knows that, unfortunately. It's kind of the forgotten country. You have Scotland, Ireland, and England that everyone always knows, but Wales is actually a country. We have our, you know, we have our own flag. We have our own national anthem, all that stuff. We're actually a country. So grew up, but we're really small country. Maybe 2.8 million people live in the whole country. And I grew up in a town of 200 people. Like here, you hear people talk about all the time, hey, I grew up in a small town, it was like 6,000 people. I'm like, that's a small town to you. I grew up in 200 people lived in my town. So it gives you an idea. There was a fish and chip shop. There was a small grocery store, post office, and there was 3 pubs. So that's kind of gives you no stoplight, not a stoplight in sight. So tiny little town, grew up there, always wanted more. I don't know why. I don't know what caused that, to be honest with you. I always kind of wanted more for my life outside of that, right? And there's nothing wrong with where I live. Amazing people, amazing friends, amazing family, amazing area, beautiful, beautiful place. Like when the sun is shining there, it's beautiful. But there's not a lot of opportunity and not a lot necessarily going on right there. So I always wanted more, and I never knew what that looked like. I think initially I thought it was going to be being a professional soccer player, right? But I was nowhere near good enough, but I dreamed and I worked hard at it, but I just didn't have that natural ability to do that. So started lifting weights, loved training, loved going to the gym, loved anything sports, and just build a physique for myself. And by the age of 21, 22, I was about 6'6", 280, you know, shredded. But, you know, I was going to the gym on a Saturday night, not really drinking, dedicating myself to going to the gym because I loved it. I just loved it. I fell in love. The moment I went to the gym properly and started training and doing all that stuff, and I got results really quick. I don't know if it was genetics or it was just the hard work, maybe a combination of both. So I was like 6'6", 2, and I was like, man, I'm training all this time and doing all this work. What can I do with it, right? Like, you know, I kind of know I want to do more and I have an opportunity, and I was getting noticed everywhere I go just from the way I looked, right? So I knew I was like, had something to offer or something, but I never wanted to do bodybuilding, never like appealed to me. And one day I was just watching TV and wrestling came on, and I wasn't really a wrestling fan growing up just because we only had 4 TV channels growing up. That was the norm. It wasn't like we were poor or anything like that. That was the norm. 4 TV channels. Imagine that, right? I was miserable as a kid. Like Sundays were horrible because it was just like 2 of the channels were like church channels on Sunday singing hymns, and like the other 2 were just like farming channels. So it was just brutal growing up, not being able to watch TV. But so I didn't really watch wrestling that much growing up. I knew about it. I watched a little bit here and there. But when I watched it, I was like, wow, I think I can do this. This is awesome. Like I you know, I'm athletic, I'm big like these guys. So and then I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I go about it? Because in Wales, in the UK, right, and especially in my small town, wrestling isn't what it is here. Like here, everybody's like, oh, you're a wrestler? That's so cool. Like, oh, wow, I love wrestling. I watch wrestling. You know, like what those guys do is awesome. Like where I grow up is more like, you want to be a wrestler? Okay. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that, you know, it's like men in tights, like fake fighting. You know what I mean? Like these guys are trying to pretend that they're their fighting is real. Whereas here it's like, oh, it's that awesome entertainment, like spectacle, like it's so cool. Those guys are athletes, what they do. There it wasn't like that. So I was like, God, how do I even go about this, right? Because I knew I wanted more, and I thought this was a really good opportunity for me. It just seemed to make sense. So it just so happens, like a few months later, a wrestling show came to my town, tiny, small, like in the field. The ring was like lopsided because it'd been raining. They had a chandelier lighting. It was like hilarious but brilliant at the same time. And I met the rest of the promoter there. He was a guy who'd been wrestling promoting for over 50 years, and he was looking for someone to kind of mentor and teach. And and it was important to him that they spoke Welsh, because we have our own language. It's called Welsh, and it's my first language. So we struck it off straight away, and he saw the way I look. He saw that I spoke Welsh. And we just had a good talk, and he started training me. And he was such a character, man. I can get into that if you want, but I'm turning this into a really long thing now, because he was such a character. He was such a character. He was amazing. So he kind of guided me, taught me a lot of stuff, and kind of made me into what I am today. Like, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him, really. But so eventually got signed by the WWE. I was down in London doing some TV appearances, because in the meantime, I'd done what they call UK Gladiators, which is the UK version of US Gladiators, right? I was one of the gladiators. My gladiator name was Goliath. So that was pretty cool. That was a cool experience. So I was down in London doing filming through that after we'd filmed the show, and WWE were there. And my friend was a scout, and he'd be trying to get me to go for a while, because he knew that they'd sign me, and he gets $1,000 every time they sign me. So he was trying to get me there all the time. But I wanted to buy my time, make sure I got a bit of experience, because you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So eventually went there, met with them, and they signed me pretty much straight off the bat, which was amazing. Like, I'm not saying that arrogantly. Hopefully, it was just what happened. So within 6 months, I was in Tampa, Florida, wrestling for the WWE, like in the training school. And then a year later, I made my debut on TV, did some pay-per-views, wrestled all over the world, wrestled all over the US. And then eventually that came to an end. And then I got a gig with Cirque du Soleil, and now I moved to Vegas. I was in Tampa at the time, moved to Vegas. I perform for Cirque du Soleil now in their show called CAR, the MGM Grand. And yeah, I've been here nearly 5 years now, but we haven't worked since March. So, but we're going to start back up probably end of summer, I think.
I love that. And there's so much there. But ultimately, how many people do you think, when you first were on TV, how big was that audience that you wrestled for?
Oh, yeah, Monday Night Raw, 5 million people watching. And in the arena, you're talking anywhere between 12 and 20,000.
So you don't really have a training ground for that. You just have to go out and perform, correct? I mean, like, there's not something that you can practice for that's going to feel the magnitude of that, correct?
Yes and no, right? So what it is they train you. So they really train you. So when you get to their training school, they have a whole process. They want to mold you into kind of what, because there's all kinds of different styles of wrestling. You have Japanese, Mexican, British, European style. There's all different kinds of style, but they want you to wrestle kind of their style. They call it like TV style, right? It's like what they want, what Vince McMahon wants, what he's kind of understands what works best at this moment. So they kind of train you to be that style, and also they teach you how to work the camera, right? Because there's one main camera that you work to, and you're always taught. I'm giving some insider secrets here, maybe I should, but you always work to that camera because that's where the money is, right? You're working towards that side, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. I think everything's out there now. So you get trained in all this, right? So you understand and you get trained pretty well. So when that moment comes, you've kind of know what to do. And honestly, for me, you think about it beforehand, but when you do it, you don't pay attention. For one, you don't know the 5 minutes. It's just a camera, right? So the 5 million people at home is just a camera. And then the whatever it is, 20,000 people are there. It's tunnel vision. For me anyway, I didn't really pay attention to anything that was going outside around, because I was really nervous about what I wanted to do, right? It was a big opportunity. So I wanted to make sure I did a good job. So I was just focused on what I did, and everything else was kind of irrelevant. So you can't train for that nerves of knowing that this is a huge opportunity. But outside of the 5 million people and the 20,000 people that are there, it didn't affect me as much because I was so focused on what I was doing.
I think what's interesting, because there's a lot of people out there, like, it's something easy for me, so I do it. It's not a big deal. I fly around the country, go to meetups and stuff, but like ultimately in life, I think everything is training ground or stepping stones to get you where you want to go. Right. And so, I see you on other podcasts. I see you on your podcast, and you're a performer. Like you're happy to show up, and you're not performing as a version of yourself. You're yourself. But like, I look at the basis to all the training that you had in the WWE, and I see this as an amazing way for you to transition into what you do now, which is Cirque du Soleil and then real estate, right? I see a platform that allows you to feel comfortable in a room full of strangers. Not really?
No. Yeah, no, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm somewhat of an introvert, believe it or not.
Okay.
This is interesting that you brought that up, and I'm not trying to plug anything.
No.
Someone asked me to do a talk on Monday night about getting into character. And I never thought about it before, but ultimately we're all playing different characters all the time, right? You're talking to your wife, you're playing a certain character, you go meet someone on a construction site to talk about work that you're doing, you're talking to a lender about a loan that you're trying to get. You're playing yourself. It's always yourself, right? But they play different versions of yourself, and it's different characters. Like when I come on this show now, right, I'm playing a different version of myself. I'm not like walking around the house telling stories and like, you know what I mean, having fun with my friend and like all this stuff. So it's different versions of yourself. So the entertainment, maybe what it taught me was how to be in character, maybe, and I never thought of that before. And not that I'm being fake and not that I'm being someone else, but it's a different version of myself. So like, when I'm doing all this stuff, maybe it's come easier to me because I've had practice now in terms of how to get into character. And everyone has that ability. I think everyone has that switch that they can turn. It's just taking practice and figuring out. Some people it comes easier, some people it doesn't. And some people it isn't as much of an act, but it all is somewhat of you playing a character, I think, to some extent.
Well, do you think that the pressure that you felt from the amount of the way that you had to perform in a full stadium and all that stuff, do you find it easier to invest in real estate is, or it's still scary as ever for you when you get into a deal? Like, because ultimately, like the pressure of like having to show up and be ready, like it did, like ultimately, if like it was your name up, like it didn't matter if you were sick. It didn't matter if you like your arm hurt, like you had to show up and get it done. There's people out there that pay you money. And so, ultimately I find like if you run across like, like I have a buddy, right, who manages like $5 billion. And like, I ask him all the time, like, how do y'all make trades like that? Where it's just like, $350 million. And he's like, at some point you kind of just get numb to the dollar amount and it's more about the execution.
Yeah. I think for me, what it is so that it's easy, but I think I'm good at going through pain. I think I'm not pain, but like discomfort and stuff that like, there's a lot of times I'm like, oh God, I don't feel like doing this. Like Monday night when I was doing, it was a 5-minute presentation, but I was nervous as hell. And I was almost thinking an hour before, like, oh, I wonder if I can say this, like, oh, I don't feel good. I don't, and then, you creeps in your mind. And then there's that other side, I think, of me that's stronger that always goes, no, you got to do this. What are you talking about? And it was the same when I wrestled. I used to get nervous, get so nervous. And I was like, I wonder if like, my knee gives out a little bit, I can have an excuse not to, to take the easy way out, right? Because I think our minds and our bodies want to take the easy way out. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's like us protecting ourselves, I think, somehow, right? But ultimately, I always end up following through and making through it. Like the other side of me, I don't know if it's that part of me that always wanted more, the part of me that wanted to be successful, always like, pushes through that discomfort, pushes through that worry, pushes through that nervousness, right? And I just always seem to come through. So I remember those times with wrestling, and I think, maybe that they help in terms of that I've done it enough times now that, I went through that discomfort, that it helps me when that moment comes up. But I still have that to this day with a lot of stuff, like with presentation, with speaking with people, with doing with deals, with talking with brokers, with a lot of stuff. But I don't know, I just ultimately push through, I guess. And
And what started you down the path of deciding that there was something? I mean, obviously the taxing and the physical toll and mental toll it takes on to stay a wrestler is well documented. I mean, it's so was there other people in the wrestling world that were talking real estate, or where did that itch come? Because I don't think in a town of 200 people, you learned a lot about multifamily real estate.
No, but actually what it is, so my great granddad started a company making wheels. This is gonna kind of, I guess it'd be kind of a long story. I'll try and make it quick. But they made wheels for horse and carriage like over 100 years ago, I think now. So, and they also made coffins. So they were also the undertakers. This was my great granddad. Then my granddad took over the business. And I remember, so he had the business, and by that time it transformed into a little bit more of a construction business. So I remember being a kid, he built like a triplex in my local little town, a little triplex.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I remember going there as a kid with my dad, and they were painting and doing all the work and stuff like that. And then fast forward 20 years later, my dad and his brother built another triplex almost right next to that. Mm-hmm. So I remember being around that, but I never wanted to be in that business. This is a strange thing. I worked as a carpenter. That was another driving force behind me. I just really hated it. I was probably the world's worst carpenter because I just hated it. It was something I landed in, right? My dad owns this business. What else am I going to do? I'm in a town of 200 people. It's not like you can choose what you want to be. Jobs are scarce. You don't have many options. So I ended up going to work for him and doing that. And I just hated it. I just hated it every day, to be honest with you. And I was terrible at it because if you hate something, you just do it. So, but I think I was around that. So I had that for one. I think I'd subconsciously, even though I never thought about it ever, I think it was there subconsciously. And what happened with me was when I was wrestling, I didn't have a plan B at all. People had told me like, hey, have a plan B, figure something else out. But my plan A was to be the world heavyweight champion. My plan B was to be the world heavyweight champion. And my plan C was to be the world heavyweight champion, right? That was my plan. And I was focused and I was working hard. And, I really thought I was going to get there, not from a place of arrogance, not because I was like full of myself. It was just, I had this quiet confidence. I just believed in it. So I didn't need anything else, right? What do you need anything else if you're going to be the world heavyweight champion, right? Well, that all came crashing down in 2014. So they didn't renew my contract in April of 2014. So what happened was I just bought a house in January of 14. Perfect timing, huh? Talk about a perfect storm. And the house was a really expensive house. It was like a $435,000 home. First home I bought, but I was making decent money at the time, and I just wasn't that financially smart at the time. But it was like 1/4. My monthly payment was about 1/4 of what I made that month. So I thought, okay, I'm pretty good, right? You know what I mean? And the monthly payment was about $2,600, $2,550 actually was a monthly payment. So it was a lot, but I was like, all right, I got this job, and I'm going to be the world heavyweight champion. Like, didn't see for a second what happened that year. So now, fast forward, I'm a wrestler. I can pick up people and I can pick up dumbbells, but outside of that, I don't have too many skills, right? I don't. What am I going to do, right? And outside of WWE as well, there's not that many wrestling opportunities, not to make really good money anyway. So I was like, God, what am I going to do? So I realized that my dream had kind of come to an end, and I was still hoping that maybe it might come back around, in future years. But at that time, it was a pretty tough time. It was a pretty, dark. I was in a kind of a dark place in my life, right? Just everything had come crashing down. And I couldn't sell the house because I loved the house, right? I bought the house as an emotional play. It was zero investment behind it. It was just an emotional, I love the house. I love the layout. I love where it is. Love the neighborhood, all that stuff. So I was like, I love the house. So I couldn't bring myself to sell that house because that was like a bridge too far for me, right? Mentally, I just couldn't bring myself to sell it. So I was like, didn't want to lose something else that I loved. So I ended up going down the rabbit hole of finding a tenant, learning how to screen a tenant, like all that stuff. What does a good tenant look like? All that stuff. So I think that kind of led me to Bigger Pockets and probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad at some point. I remember reading it, but I can't remember that being the point. But I know I did read it pretty early on. And then I fell in love with real estate investing. I think it was the fact that it could be a plan B, that you could create, phenomenal wealth, like just almost from nothing, right? It's not like stocks where it's like, it can be kind of complicated and you got to understand a lot, right? To kind of make big gains and all that stuff. It was just simple, and I could understand it. You buy a property, you get a tenant in, you make that money, and hopefully the property goes up. They pay down the mortgage, you make cash flow, all that stuff. It just, and the tax benefits, it all made sense to me. So I just really then dived into real estate, and I was like researching real estate, and then ended up buying 3 single family homes for myself, which included the one I bought initially, which I was renting out. And then I was like, okay, so, they obviously tell you, figure out what your goal is, right? And reverse engineer that, work back. And mine was to get to 40 single family homes. And I was like, whoa, okay. Initially I was like, all right, 10 years, homes a year. And I was looking to buy them off the MLS as well, 20% down. Well, every year I was going to buy one owner occupied so I could get in with like 5%. But then the other ones are going to be 20% down. I was like, God, okay, trying to crunch the numbers. Like, what is the average home price here in Vegas? How much down payment do I need? And I was like trying to save every penny and push my wife to make more money so that we could like get to that 4 a year. And then someone told me one day, it's like, hey, you can buy one apartment complex and get to 40 doors in one deal, right? And then you can like use other people's money and you can partner up. And I was like, wait, what? What are you even talking about right now? These big apartment complexes, and a 40 unit was huge to me at the time. Like, was the biggest thing ever. These big apartment complexes all around me, people buy those by themselves. I'm like, yeah, people like you and me buy those things all day, every day. And I was like, wow. So that started me down the rabbit hole, multifamily. And then I realized, multifamily, you can force appreciation. You're not at the mercy of the market comparables. You know what I mean? If you increase the NOI, the net operating income, you increase the value of the property. You have more tenants, so that insulates you if there's one or two that goes vacant, right? It just seemed to make a lot of sense for me. And there's a ton of other stuff in there as well, but it just seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And I just also could see that I in my opinion, you can make money in anything, right? But I just thought you could make more money in multifamily. I thought long term.
Yeah, I think ultimately the thing the only thing I worry about with multifamily investors is how to stay motivated, because those deals take longer. It's not like you're buying a property every 3 months in single family or flipping houses or something. So, how do you, when you switch the narrative and you started focusing on multifamily, how long did it take you to get your first deal?
It took a while because maybe a year, I would say, maybe a little bit more, because I was cautious. I hate to say the word analysis paralysis because I never thought I would get that, but maybe I did. Maybe I thought that I needed to know more than I did. I needed to make sure that it was a good deal. And I didn't know that it was a good deal early on. If it was, so I had all these things. So it took me a while to get to my first deal. But I don't know if motivation is an issue at all, because I don't know, you can wait 6 months to buy a single family home, right? If you don't, what I mean? It's not.
I just think ultimately the issue is that it feels like everybody's buying multifamily right now. So the deals might be a little hard to come by. So that's why I worry about, just if you're not taking care of your daily habits and putting in the work, that glass. Put it this way: the glass ceiling to break into your first multifamily is a little harder than a single family. I'm not saying that it's different. It might be easier to some, but once you finally do break in, I feel like the world opens up pretty good.
Yeah, no, I would agree that definitely a single family home is definitely much easier to buy. I would agree with that. I think it depends, right? I think the motivation factor has never been an issue for me personally. Maybe it is for other people. And of course, I would love to get a deal yesterday, right? You know what I mean? It is definitely much harder to find deals, and you've got to look at a lot more deals, and it's there's less of them as well, right? There's, in any market, there's always going to be more single family properties than multifamily for the most part. So of course, yeah, it does take longer. But for me, I just knew that's where I wanted to be. And it just, I just know that that's what I want to buy. So the motivation factor isn't an issue. I'm never like, oh, let me go do something else. So let me do this. But it is frustrating. I won't lie. Yeah.
So what are you doing on a daily basis that you can that is putting you closer to your goals of buying multifamily? What are you doing on a weekly, daily basis?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. So for one, as you mentioned, the podcast, right? That's something I've started doing. It started end of August. We're December 16th today for people who are I'm not sure when this will go out. But so the podcast in itself has been awesome because it's created a bigger network. So I do that. I don't know, I do probably 8 or 9 interviews a week. So that's 8 to 9 people that I'm meeting, 8 to 9 connections, relationships, pieces of great pieces of information that I get out then during the interview, before and after the interview, right? A lot of times that's where the magic really happens. So that's definitely one thing. I'm really busy with that. Another thing is obviously reaching out to brokers. So for anyone who doesn't invest in multifamily, most of them are brought by brokers, right? By essentially commercial real estate agents. They call them brokers. So they because what they do is they're calling owners all day, every day, and they have relationships with owners, and so they usually find the deals. And different brokers, a lot of deals happen off market, so they don't even put them on the market. So you need to have relationships with all the brokers. So it's continuing those relationships. I'm actually going to call one right after this call, actually, because there's a deal I want to talk about. So talking about that, looking at deals, trying to keep connecting with people in the market. So I invest in Cincinnati. I'm in Las Vegas, but I invest in Cincinnati. So anytime I'm on Facebook, I'm part of all these groups. If I see anything about Cincinnati, I'm, writing that person. My friends there already, talking to them, obviously, and also letting people know, right? You hear this all the time, but that's huge. If you're trying to find, you let people know, like, what are you doing? What are you looking for? What market are you looking in? You know what I mean? So all those things, I guess, and I think ultimately is just trying to find deals to look at, right? To start off with, right? Because you've got to look at them and analyze them. And unless you're getting to that point, you can't get to the point where you're making offers. So just trying to get as many deals on my desk as possible so I can analyze them.
And since COVID happened and the Vegas has been, the shows have been shut down for the most part. I mean, obviously it's not ideal. You would love to work and have that income coming in, but ultimately, how has it adjusted your life? I mean, have you put more of a focus on real estate, or does it make the want to get to a point like in your finances where this wouldn't be a concern moving forward? Yeah.
So interestingly, this time, so first time around when WWE didn't renew my contract, it was like not a great moment in my life, right? It was just so much concern, so much panic, so much fear, all of that stuff, right? It was rough. This time around, it felt kind of similar because it was like, oh, what's going to happen next, right? They said we're going to come back, but at the time, like, imagine March 9th, right? None of us, like, the world is frigging falling apart at the time, right? We don't know what's going to happen next. So I had that moment of fear, kind of similar to what happened, but it quickly changed for a few reasons. One, I thought I was going to get my job back, so it wasn't that bad. But also I had my son. So I was like, all right, this is great. I was like, I hate going to work because I hated living him. I love my work, but I hated leaving him. And also I had the real estate. I'd really been sort of slowly amping things up and learning more and more. And I was like, okay, I know I can make things work with real estate if I really have to, right? And I had some income streams coming from real estate at the time that, weren't enough to cover expenses, but it wasn't far off, right? We live pretty frugally. We live below our means. Plus, I also saw it eventually as an opportunity to, like you said, scale up my real estate investing and, my actions towards that. That's why I started the podcast, though. So, yeah, hopefully this doesn't sound bad for people, but it's been really good for me. Like, I hope people.
No. I get it. They know my message, but ultimately, I think the question that I would like to ask you is, how much further along do you think that you are now from March? How much further along, because you've taken the opportunity to make the connections, focus down on being a father, and study real estate. How much do you think this 9 months or 10 months do you think has supercharged you ahead?
Massively, no doubt about it. Yeah. I don't know if I would have started the podcast, because that's been huge, right? I'm sure you know it yourself. It's just such a cool thing. But I don't think I ever would have gotten to that point, because the reasons. One, I had time, and I was like, all right, I'm just like, for the first month or so, I did kind of sit around, or maybe 2 months, I did kind of sit around a bit and kind of not do nothing. I was like out with my son and doing all this. I wasn't just sitting on the couch all day, but I wasn't really overly active with real estate stuff. There was stuff I was still doing, and I'm probably doing more at the time than some people. But I knew that I needed to do more, because I felt guilty for not doing anything, and I felt lazy, and I didn't like that feeling. But also, like you touched on earlier, I wanted to create something, because I knew I was like, all right, well, I need to really move things forward, right, in my investing career, right? Because I need to get to a point where I really can rely on my real estate, right? Because who knows if I don't get my job back, right? Who knows what's going to happen next? And here's a good opportunity for me to get there. And even if I do get my job back, I can be in that position of financial freedom, right? If my job does go south or anything like that. So, and Yeah, and to then also have all that time to do the podcast. Like I do a daily podcast now, right? I release my episodes daily. So to do that many interviews, I never would have been able to do that before, ever. So yeah, I'm way ahead than I ever would have been. So to me, in some ways, and again, not to sound like bad, because I know a lot of people are hurting. I know a lot of people are hurting. But it's been kind of a blessing for one to be spending time with my son, which has been awesome. He's freaking crazy, but he's awesome at the same time. And to also, like you said, supercharge my real estate investing and really make some big moves that's going to, only get better and better, I think.
Well, I think something that's interesting and something that I am really looking into / kind of just like living by these days is I think ultimately in life, regardless of how much money you make in your job, regardless of what's happening out in the universe, the world, or what the economy, I think too many times in life we operate from a place of weakness, meaning, my income is based off of the whims of the CEO, or my health is based off the whim of, is the gym open? And too many times that when you make decisions from that space of weakness or scarcity, you're making a decision based on emotion and not from a position of strength or abundance. And when you turn it around and you control what you can control and you operate from a space of strength, then you're actually making a decision based on your best and wants and highest needs. And I think that's the big difference in life that can change everything for you.
Yeah, I'm not a stoic or anything, and I haven't really studied that much. But one thing I've listened to a little bit is Marcus Aurelius's meditations, right? One of them is like 1 day a week, take a day to like make everything bad, right? Sleep on the floor, like don't eat all day, like wear your worst, dirtiest clothes, right? Don't indulge in any luxury whatsoever. So that at that point, and I've never done this myself, right? I just like the idea of it, right? But essentially what it means is that if you do that 1 day a week or 1 day a month, whatever it is, then if that ever happens, fine, you're used to it. You do it. You've done it once a week, once a month, and it's not necessarily actually doing that. It's that concept, right, of like feeling that and knowing, hey, this isn't that bad, right? And it's also, and what I would add on top of that is adding gratitude and thanks, right? Because it's like, our life is awesome. We're all on or whoever's on a journey for financial freedom and real estate, right? And they always say it's the journey, not the destination. But it's so true, because what happens when you get there? Okay, financial freedom, boom, life is amazing, done, I'm finished. Like, well, you wasted the 10 years or 5 years or whatever it took to get there, right? Because I keep doing that. Like I keep thinking ahead, and you kind of do that as a real estate investor. Next investment, next move, next blah blah blah, right? Setting goals, trying to reach those goals, all that stuff. But where I'm at now in my life, and it's like, for me personally, I just look at my son sometimes. I'm like, with my wife, and I have my dog with him. I'm like, how can it get any better than this right now? Like, my son has been hilarious. My wife is beautiful. Like, and I'm just like, what else do I need right now, right? And I think if you can incorporate that, and I know it's not always the case, right? You have a job you don't like, and that's what drives a lot of people, or you have a life that you're not really happy with. But not to sound philosophical or whatever, but we've all got stuff we can be thankful. There's stuff that we can show gratitude for. And man, it's just life-changing when you can kind of have that outlook, right? We always want more. I think it's human nature, but there's always something to be thankful for and to see the positive and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like, I've got to a place, and I was reading something this morning, and on my morning workout outside, it kind of hit me. And it was like, I'm never as fucked up and as crazy as my life has been, and my story is bananas, I've always got through it. And it may not have been pretty, it might not have been amazing, but I stepped on the other side of it. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, like, so, I mean, I've always got through it. We have this moment in time where this conversation might hit somebody. And so what I try to do in everything I do, every time I get on the phone with somebody, every time I send a message or do a podcast, is it's not about me. It's so much bigger than me, because if it touches somebody or whatever, so it's like, ultimately, like, that's the juice. Like, that's the juice of life, is like getting up every day, keeping the promises that I'm going to keep to myself, and keeping the ones that are close to me that care for me in being the number one thing that I work on. My new favorite saying is be where your feet are. And I think too many times we look into the past to see what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened. And ultimately those things were, I have a client, right? And long story short, he's got some things in his past he's not happy with. And I said, can you wrap your head around that the fact that you're as successful as you are right now is because those things happen? If you can get to that place, then they don't matter anymore. And I think we sometimes look in the rearview mirror too damn much instead of looking at exactly I have a roof over my head, a heater on. I'm talking to you in my jeans and I have no shoes on. Life is great. Like, you're in Vegas, I'm here, and we gloss over so many things that are amazing every day because we're so worried about where we're getting, when ultimately that where we're getting is going to move when we get there, regardless of if we get there or not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even I'm not even trying to say that I've got everything figured out. So even these days, I still miss wrestling. I'd be lying if I still miss wrestling. And there's times I have dreams that I'm still wrestling. And I'm like, I miss it. And I'm like, I wish I was kind of there sometimes, But then I realized, well, wait a minute. Like, the idea of being there and being on TV and doing all this stuff is kind of good. But at the same time, like, I'd be away from my son 5 days a week, 5.5 days a week, and sometimes for weeks on end. And like, what kind of, and even when I would be home, I'd be home for a day and a half a week. I'd be doing my laundry, going to the gym, like doing every little that I needed before I left again. So what kind of dad would I be? What kind of time would I be able to spend with my son, right? And like, it's not that I'm not financially driven in terms of I need a Porsche, I need a Ferrari, I need a whatever, right? Fancy clothes, fancy watches or anything like that. It's just money is just financial freedom for me. I can do what I want.
Yeah.
So to your point, 100%. I have, it's that past has got me to where I am now, but it's like I'm also, there's no point looking back because I'm actually now where I am than if I actually was where I think I should be or I wanted to be, right? You know what I mean? It's easy to think you want to be something, but in reality, my life is great now. What do I need to be on TV wrestling for? What do I need to be gone all the time for?
No, and I just saw it. I mean, I literally did your podcast, and you were in Puerto Rico, right? And
Republic, yeah,
Dominican Republic, and you are on your floaty in the pool with your son, like answering emails.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's the joys of real estate, and like I would imagine that was. Not that that was the first time you've taken a trip, but I would imagine that was a big aha moment for you, in the path that you're walking is the exact path you need to be doing.
Yeah, and that's what real estate, I think that's why I fell in love with real estate. It also came with a realization, and I think I was in real estate before I had the realization, and I talk about this all the time, but it's like we have the power to control our lives, right? You have like every day when you wake up, right? And we all have different circumstances, so it's harder for some people, but especially living here in the US, right? We all really do have the power to be whatever we want to be. It's just nuts to me. Like, you can create whatever friggin' life you want for yourself. Like, really, you really, really can. Like, oh no, but this, or no, but that. No. You really, genuinely, honestly have the power to be whatever you want to be. Now, is that going to take 20-hour days for some people? Like, for 3 years straight? Maybe, but you still have that power, right? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying you can just go out there and just be, oh yeah, I have the power to do what I want and kind of make it happen just by thinking it. No, it's going to be harder for some people, but you have the power to create whatever life you want for yourself. And with real estate, for me, I saw that even more, right? I can create a business where I need to be there like every single hour of the day, or I can create a business where I rely on other people. I use property managers, I use contractors, I use lenders, I use insurance brokers, I use partners, right? I use all these things, and I can kind of have that freedom because I enjoy I enjoy traveling and going to these nice places, right? It's not that I was there. I was doing, I don't know if we did our podcast there or if we did it somewhere else, but I did like 6 or 7 podcasts that week. I'm, replying to emails, texting people, calling people if I need to be, right? While I'm there. And it's not a stretch. I'm still enjoying 80% of my day is just maybe I take 20%, and even you can do it like I was floating in the pool doing that, right? And I just did that. I wasn't doing that to show off. If everyone watches that, I was worried that was going to seem like me showing off. No, I just wanted to show people what was possible, right? That you can still do it. So that's why I love it. So passionate about real estate, because it really creates that for me, to be able to create that life that I want for myself.
No, and I think ultimately that's what everybody's after. And what I want to make very clear is it doesn't have to look the way that me and Barry do it. You don't have to start a podcast. Like, you could have 2 or 3 rentals, right? Or 1 or 2 Airbnbs that give you those extra 3 weeks a year to take time with your family. Or, a lot of people I talk to, especially people from other countries like Colombia, and a lot of the guys I've interviewed from Mexico, like, ultimately the entire reason they started real estate or a business was to give their mom and dad vacations that they could never afford as a kid. And like, when my buddy tells the story of like seeing his 68-year-old father step the first time in an ocean in Colombia and like cry, and then like he took him in a plane and like he's crying, like, is there anything better? I don't really think there's anything better. And so it's ultimately what you can do with what you create and the experiences you can have with your loved ones. Like, I'm sitting here and you're telling that story of Dominican Republic. I'm already thinking, when are we going to Costa Rica to go hang out with my coach and my other friends who own Airbnbs? Like, we're doing this spring, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then we'll work from there,
That's
like,
a cool thing. You could do that, right? You can go like work in these places that you love to travel, right? You can still do it and meet people. And the good thing is, I'm not a tax professional or anything like that, but I think if you spend a majority of the day kind of networking and socializing about real estate, you can actually kind of make it into a tax write-off. Now, you'd have to ask your CPA about that, so don't come back and sue me or anything like that. But I think you can actually turn it around and actually make it into a business trip as well. And so what better way to be sitting on the beach, like, with your friends talking about real estate, right? Like, what you can design, you can do these things, right? It's just so cool to me. Yeah. And I think what you said there is so true, man. I think people who don't invest in real estate, and I'm trying to get them to do it, or I talk with them, they're like, what they say all the time, and I hate when they say, it's like, I don't care about money. I'm not mad about money. And they even say, I'm not mad about money like you. And that's even like, for one, I can't believe you say that to my face. That's kind of really rude, for one, right? But I've had them say that, and I'm like, okay, I'm not, me neither. I'm not like waiting to build a big pool of money and go dive into it every day and like count my dollars and be like, oh yeah, I have so much money. No, it's about the financial freedom. And like you said, the experiences, right? The experiences that you create, right? Even if it's the experiences being home with my son and seeing him like run around the house and do something stupid, that's an experience in itself. That's something that I'm going to always treasure, because he's not always going to be this small, right? There's going to be a time when he doesn't want to be around his uncool dad, right? He's going to be like, get away from me, right? Or hopefully maybe there won't be, but those are experiences. It's not about like, and to some people it is, and if it is, that's cool too, right? If you want a Ferrari, if you want a massive house, if you want a Rolex, I am not judging you. Go for it, man. You're out there working for it. You're out there doing it. Go for it. Buy whatever you want. You work for it. But I just don't like when people make excuses. And that's what it is. They're scared to take action. They're scared to move forward. They're scared to do something. So they make excuses. They say, oh, I don't have money for that. Oh, I couldn't do that. Oh, I don't care about money. Oh, money is the root of all evil, right? They say all these things to protect themselves, again, I think, to protect their ego, because we all have an ego to some extent, right? So they say that to protect their ego. But what they don't realize is, even if they don't care about money, like you said about that story, that's an amazing story about his 68-year-old dad. That's just unbelievable. That's just awesome to me. I think that story should be all about should be the advertisement for real estate, right? But isn't there someone you can help in your life? If you have enough money or you don't care about money, is there nobody in your life that you can help? Your sister that is a single mom with 2 kids, your parents who are struggling to make the mortgage. I don't know. You have an uncle that's sick that can't take care of himself, or even outside of that, everyone in your family is great, and in your circle there's no issues whatsoever, right? Isn't there somewhere, a cause that you would like to help? Isn't there, a charity you'd love to give a lot of money for? That, there's always, money can do good, right?
Well, it's like, that's my fucking, don't even get me fucking revved up, because ultimately my issue is that the people that say that bullshit is like, well, money is the root of evil. It's not going to take you where you want. But like, in order to really like feed the homeless and do all this shit, where the fuck do you think this shit comes from? Like, I'd rather be rich and give it away. And so like, when I tell people like my true goal is to give houses away, I'm not talking about a fucking sheet of sheetrock. I'm talking about an entire house. Like, I want to give an entire house away. So like, in order to do that, I got to go create a bunch of wealth. It has nothing to do with, do I want a house in Costa Rica and do I want a house in Italy? Of course, but I don't need the mansion. Like, and so that's where I can't stand that shit, that cop out excuse bullshit statement, because you look at people like Tony Robbins, or like a perfect example. I interviewed one of my friends today. His boss is a great mortgage broker. They bought 30 bikes this year for kids that don't have bikes for Christmas. That didn't come with sticks and fucking whittles. It came with money. Like, so like, you can say whatever you want, but he's giving back because he's made more money. So that's where, like, that's what it's about to me, is like creating the time gap experiences for people and allowing them to do these crazy things and enjoy and have these experiences and work and all these things. And so in order to do that, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and stop bullshitting yourself and make sure that you're maximizing your effort in life to create the dreams and the goals that we had when we were kids, like that we thought about, right? Instead of like being so beat down with society that you lost your dream mechanism,
Yeah. And I think there's two things there that, one is like, I find the more successful the people, the more they give. Really, like, don't get me wrong, there is people that are selfish and that are greedy and they don't want to share a single penny. But the people that are listening to this are people, they're probably not people that listen to this actually, but people that say, oh, I don't need money, oh, you greedy, oh, blah, 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 right? How much money do they give away? I would love to ask every single one of them, how much money do you give away? I give away some percentage of money. I would love to give more. But like, I find the more successful the people, the more they give away. Because then, once you get to a point as well, like, you start asking yourself, like, what is this wealth about, right? And I've heard it time and time again. They say that the wealth and the money is more than them. So they feel they feel a need and obliged to give money. And it's that. And then going back to the other point is like, life is, you talked about like being a kid and having that dreams and living life to that excitement, right? I'm going to go out today to play. I'm going to do this, right? Life is so short. Like I'm 38 now. I'll be 39 next year. It's not that I'm old, but man, I got here quick. Like, really, so quick. Like, literally, like, in a blink of an eye. Like, I can remember being 16 and being in school like it was yesterday. And this, for anyone young out there, I'm sorry if this sounds like a repeated story, because this sounds like I'm repeating stuff that I heard when I was 20, and it just sounded so annoying and so dumb. But it's so true. Life is so short. So you owe it to yourself. Like, in a blink of an eye, you're going to be 90, right? And like, hopefully you all live to be 90 at least. And in a blink of an eye, you're going to be 90 and be like, man, I had the choice. I could have done more. I had that choice. I could have done more. Mm-hmm. Like, just go, and it, like you said, it doesn't mean building being a real estate mogul. It might just mean getting one or two properties that have great cash flow. And the amazing thing about real estate as well, right? One deal can change your life. Yep. Might not. You might never get that deal, but it can. Mm-hmm. You can literally have one deal and it can literally change your life.
And you have to be available and open for the opportunity.
That's what it is, right? I've caught myself lately, the more I speak on other people's, I say I'm lucky. But I'm not lucky because I was open to the opportunity. Like, luck is where hard work meets opportunity, right? I love that saying because it's so true. But it's being open. And I was speaking to someone and he was talking about the law of attraction. And I don't buy into the law of attraction too much in terms of that story, the secret and all that, right? It's not that I'm saying it doesn't work, but I think ultimately I broke it down. It's just being open. The law of attraction is essentially being open to an opportunity, right? Yep. If you and me are both looking for a multifamily property, right? Like I say, I want to be a multifamily investor. You say I want to be a multifamily investor, but I'm not really looking. I just say I am, and I like the idea, or maybe I say there's no deals out there. That's my saying. That's what I say to everyone. I'm ready to buy, but there's no deals. Meanwhile, you're out there calling brokers. You're looking. When you drive around, you're looking at multifamily properties. One day you see one, and there's a broker out there happens to, taking pictures of it. You stop the car and you talk to him and you find a deal like that. Me, I would have driven right past him because there's no deals out there. So it's about being open to that opportunity, right? You kind of create your luck. I love the saying, Gary Player, who's a famous golfer, he said, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Exactly.
Right? So it's about being open to that opportunity. You always want to be open to, and it doesn't have to be real estate, it can be whatever, but you want to be open to creating whatever you want to create, right? Unless you're open to these opportunities and you're talking to people and you're just looking around. If you're just head down and just not paying attention and not being open to that, it's never going to come your way. But if you open yourself up to these things, right, they're going to come your way because you're open, you're looking for them. You know, you're attracting them. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
100%. So if people want to find out about you, the podcast, how do they do that?
Yeah, the best place is if they go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com. All the podcasts, all the YouTube socials are there. And I love speaking, probably comes across hopefully. I love speaking about this stuff, either mindset stuff, life stuff, real estate stuff. So if anyone's interested, there's going to be a link there and you can kind of sign up for a call and we can jump on the call for 30 minutes because I just love talking to people. And if we want to talk about real estate, we can talk about real estate. If we want to talk about something else, we can talk about something else. So if you go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com, all that stuff is there.
I love it. Well, dude, guys, if you like this episode, make sure you send it out to your friends, and we appreciate you for listening.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.